not look at any mirrors. You got this, Wick.
What do I do if you freak out? What do I do if you freak out?
Take me back to the office right now. Have you seen anything?
Take me back to the office now.
Widow's Bay is Apple TV's horror comedy about a small New England island that can't stop almost killing its own tourists. Created by Katie Dippold, who cut her teeth on Parks and Recreation and the 2016 Ghostbusters before turning to horror, and shaped visually by executive producer Hiro Murai, the show follows Mayor Tom Loftus as he tries to rebrand his struggling, curse-plagued island into the next Martha's Vineyard. The locals know better. Wick, a grizzled boat captain, has been begging him for years to stop the ferries. Patricia, his overlooked deputy, carries a history with the town's unsolved boogeyman murders that nobody quite believes. Every few years, the island goes violently strange again, and Tom's arrival has scheduled the next one early. Across 10 episodes, the show rotates through a different flavor of horror nearly every week. Fog horror, haunted hotel horror, folk horror, psychedelic horror, while keeping one continuous mythology and cast underneath it. Critics gave it a 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. Apple renewed it for a second season before the first one had even finished airing.
For there is always time to change the course of history. And tonight, tomorrow starts today.
Widow's Bay doesn't pick a horror subgenre and stay there. The pilot is fog horror, straight out of Carpenter and King. Episode 2 locks you in a haunted hotel. Episode 3 goes full folk horror with something living in the water. By episode 6, the show has gone black and white for a 1702 flashback. None of these episodes feel like detours. They feel like the show finally showing you what it's always been. That structure, a season built from genre-hopping chapters that share blood underneath, has a clean literary ancestor.
She was so close I could see every one of her teeth. I could see that her gums were bleeding, her lips burned by the pipe, and I could smell the tar on her breath.
Mariana Enriquez's Things We Lost in the Fire collects 12 stories, and almost none of them are doing the same kind of horror. Adela's House is a haunted house story about a girl who steps through a door and is never seen again. The Neighbor's Courtyard is creature horror wearing a domestic drama costume. The title story is closer to mass hysteria, women setting themselves on fire as protest until the act becomes its own contagion. What holds the book together isn't tone. These stories range from quiet dread to outright grotesque. It's what each story is actually about underneath the scare. Enriquez keeps returning to Argentina's political violence, its poverty, its gendered cruelty, using a different supernatural shape each time to get at a piece of it. That's the same trick Widow's Bay is running. The fog episode, the hotel episode, the sea hag episode, different genres, but every one of them is circling the same buried history of the island. The shape changes, but the wound underneath doesn't. That same restlessness with genre is matched by a stillness in Tom Loftus. No matter how strange the island gets, he keeps choosing the tourists over the truth. He's the Jaws mayor. The beach stays open, the ferry keeps running, because closing either one means admitting the brochure is a lie. That particular kind of denial, civic, public-facing, willfully blind to a body count, has its own subgenre, and it usually involves a feast nobody should be eating. The Feast of Hemlock Vale is a campaign expansion for Arkham Horror the card game, the long-running cooperative card game built around Lovecraftian mystery solving. Its setup is almost a beat-for-beat match for Widow's Bay's civic blindness. Hemlock Isle has only recently opened itself up to outside visitors, and the locals spend the campaign's daylight hours preparing for a festival, seemingly unaware that the island's wildlife has started mutating, and something malignant is moving underneath the celebration. Once night falls, the investigators discover exactly what the festival is built on top of, while the town keeps smiling and setting up decorations. Hemlock Vale even has their very own Tom in the form of Mother Rachel, a mysterious figure who insists everything's fine. an entire community organizes itself around an event that requires not noticing what's actually happening around them. And the closer the feast gets, the harder that becomes to sustain. Widow's Bay just gives that blindness a name, an office, and a ribbon-cutting ceremony. Tom's denial would feel unbearably grim if Widow's Bay played it straight. It doesn't. Patricia gets aggrieved zingers in the middle of supernatural carnage, and Wick's exasperation reads as much like sitcom timing as horror urgency. The show never treats the jokes and the scares as competing for space. They're doing the same job, often in the same scene. That's a much harder needle to thread than it sounds. Few shows have threaded it as confidently, episode after episode, as a British series built around two writer-performers who've spent 2 decades treating comedy and horror as the exact same muscle.
I like strangles.
Oh, there's one in here that used drills.
Victor Perez, 1994, 12 victims.
Well, you're not doing that, I've got a thumping headache. Are there no quiet ones, David?
Psychoville comes from Reese Shearsmith and Steve Pemberton, the League of Gentlemen duo, and it never once apologizes for being both a horror show and a sitcom in the same scene. David and Maureen Sourbuts, a man-child and his mother, casually plan to drown a man in the bath while bickering about whether the water's too cold. The joke and the murder share a sentence. The show's most acclaimed episode pays homage to Hitchcock's Rope, built around a continuous long take that lets the tension build in real time without a cutaway to relieve it. Shearsmith and Pemberton have said outright that they wanted the horror to take viewers by surprise precisely because it arrives inside ordinary, even funny domestic situations rather than warning you it's coming. Widow's Bay runs on the identical principle. Patricia's grief and Wick's stubbornness are funny right up until the moment they're not, and the show never rings a bell to tell you the tone is shifted. You're just suddenly in it, the same way Psychoville's audience is. Psychoville earns its scares through tone control in the moment. Widow's Bay earns a different kind of dread through accumulation, the sense that whatever's happening this week isn't new. It's just the latest entry in a list going back centuries. The show backs that up directly. A black and white flashback episode drops you into 1702, into the island's actual founding, where the man who built the town is already murdering a fellow settler before the first church bell rings. The curse isn't a recent infection. It's load-bearing.
And I reckon that time is now.
Harrow County, the Cullen Bunn and Tyler Crook comic, runs on the same premise. The land itself remembers, and it's been keeping score since before anyone currently alive was born. Emmy, the series' protagonist, discovers on the eve of her 18th birthday that she's bound to the woods around her town and may be the reincarnation of Hester Beck, a witch the townspeople murdered a generation earlier. The horror isn't a monster passing through. It's a debt the community itself created and has been quietly servicing for decades, watercolored by Crook into something that looks less like a haunted house comic and more like a folktale that happens to bleed. Widow's Bay 1702 episode does the same structural work Harrow County does across its whole run. It reveals that the founding act of the community was already a curse-shaped crime, and everything since has just been the island collecting on it. Tom thinks he's managing a marketing problem. He's actually living inside the third or fourth act of a story that started 300 years before he got off the ferry. That 300-year-old debt has a face now, and it wears a mask. The boogeyman is Widow's Bay's other constant, a local urban legend turned real, a killer who supposedly died decades ago after murdering teenage girls, and whose victim, Patricia, has spent her adult life disbelieved by the entire town. Episode 4 turns that legend back into a threat in the present tense. Slasher mythology runs on exactly this convention, the masked killer who is, technically, already dead and comes back anyway because the story needs him to. Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon takes that convention and makes it the entire premise. Leslie Vernon is an aspiring slasher in a world where killers like Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees are documented historical figures, and he's being trailed by a film crew as he engineers his own legend from scratch, choosing a survivor girl, rigging the farmhouse, studying exactly how victims panic and trip on flat ground. He claims to be the resurrected spirit of a boy the town killed years earlier, a claim a psychiatrist later proves false. It doesn't matter. By the credits, after being supposedly killed in an apple grinder and burned in a house fire, Leslie rises off the autopsy slab anyway, because that's simply what a slasher does at the end of his own origin story. The boogeyman works the same way. Whatever actually happened to him decades ago, Widow's Bay treats his survival less like a twist and more like a genre obligation finally being honored. The Mask doesn't care what killed the man underneath it. 5 different horrors, one island that won't stop almost selling itself to tourists? Widow's Bay works because it refuses to settle into a single shape. And once you've seen what each piece is built from, the show stops looking like a curiosity and starts looking like something carefully, deliberately constructed.